the agenda. Is there a second? No. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, the same. Approval of the minutes of the July 22nd meeting. Is there a second? Trace. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, the same. All right. Public comment. Do we have anybody in the West Wing?
Did you? Nope, no public comment. No, we have no public comment up here.
All right. Is there any call-ins?
Is there any call-ins?
Hello?
Your call-in? Can you please identify yourself and where you live?
This is Lisa. This is Lisa Dorr from Laketown Township.
Go ahead, Lisa.
That the Environmental Services Committee consider extending the moratorium on large livestock so that we have time to study in particular study the Eureka or operations ordinance and really take a look at an operations ordinance, how it would help protect the unzoned towns, and in particular really look at the legal issues around some of the concerns that people have that have been raised. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Any other callers? Anyone else who'd like to speak for public comment?
Okay, we'll close public comment. Number 5. Anyone? All right. Yes. Conflicts of interest. It's number 6 is yours. Okay, number 6 is 1, 2, 3. Who wants to start? Go ahead.
Okay, this is Fran Duncanson. The only thing I'd like to say this morning is in view of the recent document received by the county board members from DADCAP regarding multiple issues with a conditional use process, I would like for the Environmental Services Committee respectfully request that they consider extending the moratorium to permit the development and due diligence of an operational ordinance to regulate CAFOs as well. I want to thank them for all of the hard work that they've put in on this issue. I know it's been a long haul, but it is something I think the public is demanding of us, that we go the extra mile on that, extend the moratorium, and look at an operational ordinance, and to make sure we give that the proper due diligence and time that's called for to do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hold on. Okay. Thank you. I will be quick. I support what Fran says. I appreciate that you guys in front of you have a draft moratorium and a draft operation ordinance, it looks like. Yep. And so I think it's important for us to take our time to go over the science of this proposal or this business and the legal aspects of these complicated ordinances. So I appreciate the extra time on the moratorium piece. I also can just report Health and Human Services meeting got bumped down a week, so we don't have anything for you today. We were going to meet yesterday and maybe get something, but I think in light of this operation ordinance, it'll take us some time to kind of go through and come up with some conditions. But would you like us to continue on that kind of aspect or assignment to work on conditions?
Yes.
Yes.
You want them incorporated in there. Yes.
Okay. So Tanya, there's our marching orders. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Nelson.
Do I have to hold it or can I write it down? Oh, hold it up, okay. So I'm just gonna go to so Chris Nelson, I'm just as the chair, coming to all the committees. And I guess it's just a little bit of housekeeping stuff I wanna go over with. Supervisors, we have a couple new supervisors, very recently new and newest as a few months ago. And a couple things that have come up was I've had a lot of complaints about our WebEx. We've all had trouble hearing people on WebEx, having the dialogue, the conversations. Discussion's been around when we're in a committee meeting, you know, you can't get up and go have a sandwich. You can't answer the phone. You know, you just don't get up and walk out of the room. You don't talk to people. So in a committee, and especially at the county board, you know, we're supposed to raise our hand. We're supposed to be recognized. You know, you make that eye contact with people, you know, hey, you want to talk, and Doug, you got a question. And it seems like when we're doing the WebEx, it's we're missing that, and then people are talking, and then they don't hear that, hey, it's not your turn to talk. And I've talked to a couple of supervisors about that. So one of the things I'm going to be talking about at executive and making a recommendation is that everyone will be muted during our county board meetings until there's a time for a vote. So when there's a time for a vote, we'll unmute people. And I'm going to ask supervisors that if you know you have, do your homework, and if you know you have amendments, put them in writing, get them to the chair. So then at least I know you guys, someone wants to make an amendment or a motion or whatever the issue may be, even if we have committee of the whole, you know, because we want to make sure everyone gets that time to talk. And then certainly when it's time for a vote, we'll ask staff to unmute supervisors so then we can get the vote. We're going to try to find a way that maybe there's a phone number you can text saying, hey, you know, we dropped a few supervisors during the meeting. You know, it's just that cumbersome thing, and then people aren't getting their opinions heard. Now, certainly if you have medical issues, we're going to respect that with medical issues that you can attend it. You know, someone might break their leg, right? And you physically can't drive here. But as far as the COVID issue goes, I'm going to, and I talked to a couple of supervisors about this, and one particular one, that after this next month, I'm not going to excuse you for the COVID issue because you're concerned that not enough people are wearing a mask. If it's a COVID issue and you're concerned about sitting in a room and there's not enough masks being worn, we're going to set you up a separate room, and you can come to the county board meeting. We can have you in a separate room. You can be on our system. If we have any problems with the technology, someone can easily walk to that room, walk you into the room for a vote. So we're just going to try to have a little better quorum and kind of handle that. The other thing that I want to strongly urge is the county board is for doing business. And it's you need to get your amendments a second on them before we get into a big discussion. So again, and this is more new supervisors issues, is that if you want to talk about something, get your amendment made, get a second on it, you're going to have all kinds of time to talk. But to take up time to talk ahead of your amendment a lot, to talk during your amendment, and to talk after your amendment before there's even a second, we're not going to allow that. So we're just going to have to shut them off and get that second, and then there'll be plenty of opportunity to talk. The third thing is kind of a big deal, and I'm going to talk in executive committee about this too again, is a few months ago we had classes on the proper role of supervisors. And one of the things we need to do is we need to work through our committees. And if whatever the issues are, the work gets done in the committees. We can't, staff is overwhelmed. Staff has got a lot on their plate. And for supervisors to be calling up staff, and a lot of us do it, and a lot of us have done it in the past, but some of these issues are getting to be bigger. We are not supposed to be telling staff what to do. We are not supposed to be kind of micromanaging staff and saying, hey, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. Would you get this for me? Would you get that for me? Those issues, if we really have things like that that we can't work through committee on, they have to go through the administrator. There should be no more calling staff, and it's gotten a little out of control on all issues, just not on the CAFO issue. There's other stuff going on out there too that I just want to make sure that we do the best job we can to not put staff in a situation where we have supervisors asking staff to do stuff, because staff then feels like, I got to do something. You know, the supervisor's calling me, asking me for stuff. That's not our job. Our job is to legislate, pass policy, and any of those kinds of things that you need to do, bring them up in committees, get them on the agendas, go to the administrator. But we can't be, you know, and at some point we'll have to do something to stop it. But right now, just it's got to stop. And you have to put it on your agendas. And you have to do it in committees. Or you go to Administrator Netherland. Now, if Administrator Netherland says, hey, fine, go to the director, Bob, on this particular issue. I'm very comfortable with you working with him. Well, you've got the green light to do whatever you need to do with Bob, or whatever you need to do with the sheriff, or whatever you need to do with Tanya, or whatever committee, it's Chad Roberts, or it's Mo. But we gotta kind of quit calling these guys every day for our issues. So I just want to kind of do a little groundwork on that. Anyone has ideas for me to improve that, just contact me, let me know. And that's basically it. I won't take up your time. Don't want to get in a big discussion here today, but anyone can talk to me specific about how we do this. And hopefully we can be a little more professional during our meetings, and even dealing with the issues that we want to get done and we want to work on. Again, we have to do them in committee. We can't do them outside of committee. So that's all I had.
Thank you. Is there any on the call in? Any supervisors? None. All right. Number 7. Is he here? Yeah, he's back here.
The 2 lists I handed you out, the first one on top is the complete list of all county-owned properties that were set on the agenda. The second list is what's remaining on the tax deed property. As you can tell, the first one there is the properties behind Menards. One of the earnest checks came through. The others did not, would put him in breach of contract for those sales. So be working with corporate counsel, and those will go back on sale then this fall. We do not have a new property list of tax deed yet till fall due to COVID. So we'll have that up to date for the next auction later this fall.
In your first list, any of these not needed or anything? Did you go through them that way?
We found one that has gone up, that went up for sale and is sold, that was still on the list, and we're working with staff to get that removed off the list.
All right.
Put in the one place. That was a property up in Clam Falls.
Does anyone else have questions on these lists? Go ahead, Brad.
So both the properties behind Menards will go back up for sale again? I mean, we still own them both. Okay.
All right, we should be good.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Number 8. Yeah.
Tim, could you pull up that PowerPoint, please? Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee. So item A here, Parks and Trails Advisory Group update. Not a whole lot to update. We started interviews yesterday. We interviewed one candidate. We have interviews this Friday and next Friday. Altogether, we're interviewing 13 candidates. We've had 21 applicants. So things are moving along. That's all I had for the update on that.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, so moving on to B. Polk County, we have a lot of parks and trails and facilities, and I wanted to take some time at this meeting and subsequent meetings to talk about a couple of facilities at each meeting and outline some of the deficiencies and some of the opportunities that we have in each of these facilities. A lot of the opportunities that I'm going to talk about and some of the deficiencies were outlined in the outdoor rec plan that was adopted. So a lot of these things won't be new, but there is some new information. So as far as parks go, we have Algren Wildlife Preserve, Apple River Campground, Atlas Park, Black Brook Flowage, D.D. Kennedy Park, Lotus Lake Park, and then we have 2 more facilities, Summers Lake, which is, it's just kind of a green space right now. There have been trails out there in the past, but right now we're not maintaining anything. And then the Sterling ATV area, that's in the Polk County Forest up there. We have a 5 or so mile ATV trail loop. And boat landings there, you can see we have Black Brook, Little Butternut, Little Mere, Long Trade, Lotus, Mackey Lake, Magner, and Staples Lake. Tim? So today I'm going to talk about Algren Wildlife Preserve and D.D. Kennedy. So first we have the Algren Wildlife Preserve. The Algren Preserve was a piece of property that was given to the county, and the management goal for this property is to maintain a wildlife preserve with the focus on birds, migratory waterfowl, and just kind of undisturbed green space. So keeping with those management goals, that's how we developed the opportunities that we have out at Algren. Just go back one for me, Tim. For those that might not know, Algren is just south of here. It's right south of Highway 8 on 150th. So Algren, which I'll talk about a little bit later, here's Highway 8. It abuts Highway 8 on the north, and it's kind of a broken up piece divided by the Balsam Branch. So it's a 180-acre piece. We have a maintained trail out there. There's a limestone parking area. It's all non-motorized. And the main uses at Algren are pedestrian and non-motorized uses. Walking, snowshoeing. There are no maintained cross-country ski trails yet. That's an option. and it is open to archery hunting. There are no firearms allowed at Algren. The main deficiency at Algren right now is access. The southern portion of Algren has one main parking area, that's right here. There is a small parking lot here, and down here there's a parking lot. Did I do that? How do I unzoom? There we go. But the northeast portion there is pretty much inaccessible. We do have 2 spots that are on Highway 8 that we could put in a couple of access points to open up that north portion of Algren. Some improvements that we can make at Algren, we can install a handicap accessible archery hunting blind. And the Balsam Lake Sportsman's Club has volunteered to do that with the cooperation of the Boy Scouts. So that shouldn't cost the county anything other than maintenance, you know, a couple times a year going out and making sure it's still there. Let's see, we can develop and expand the trail network. And one of the options here is connecting the trail system to D.D. Kennedy. And that's mentioned further down in 2022. These 2 pieces of property are so close that it really would be an asset to have these 2 connected so we could have a seamless trail network through the property. Picnic tables and benches. We have a couple picnic tables out there. It could use a few benches. Establishing and signing a boundary, that would be helpful for the northeastern part of Algren, where there is private property on one side. And then pavilions and bathrooms, in keeping with the management goals of Algren and keeping it a green space wildlife preserve, pavilions and bathrooms are certainly an option, but probably not recommended. Okay, so I guess, are there any questions on Algren? So we'll talk about D.D. Kennedy. Everybody, D.D. Kennedy is kind of the crown jewel of the Polk County Parks system right now. It is located just south and a touch east of here off Kennedy Mill Drive. This is a map of D.D. Kennedy. There's a couple of different access points. We have the education building with the main parking lot up there. Yeah. D.D. Kennedy, it's almost 100 acres, 99 acres. Most of that is in a prairie restoration management plan. We do active burns out there. Mechanical restoration will go out and mow the brush. So we're trying to maintain for that native prairie. We have paved hiking trails throughout D.D. Kennedy. There's a dam, fishing opportunities, pavilion with grills, the education building, which is that guy, and people can rent that out for parties and weddings. And the restrooms. We have running water. That's the only facility in the county-owned facilities, that have running water, flush toilets. So some of the deficiencies at D.D. Kennedy, the restroom, there's some drainage issues, the embankment on the dam, and I'm going to talk about these in a little bit more detail. Blacktop trail is getting cracked, and then the bridge. So the first one, the restroom, the deficiencies with the restroom is the drainage of the area. Any rainwater that falls, any snow melt is draining right back towards the restroom. You can see it's rotting out the bottom boards there. We installed gutters last fall. That helped a little bit, but it didn't fix the problem totally. And all the water is running right through the bathroom into the other wall, and it's rotting out the other wall. So that's one deficiency. The dam, this is the new dam at Kennedy Mill that was done 2019, it was finished. And we're having a little bit of an issue with folks. You can see here where it's all open access, and people will walk down here to the bottom of the dam and fish. But what they're doing is they're walking straight down the hill and they're creating an area of erosion there on the embankment, which is going to need to be remedied. So we can either put in steps, a fence. Typically fences don't work in keeping people out. They'll just go over or around. So that's an option there too. And then the bridge is the other main deficiency. This is a walking bridge. It was put in roughly 20 years ago. And it's kind of hard to tell from the pictures, but you can see the bridge is twisted a little bit. And what's going on there is this back corner of the abutment is actually sinking. We've talked to a couple of contractors. Preliminary estimates anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 to either replace, repair, or remove the bridge. There are some deck boards that'll need to be replaced too, but the main issue here is that abutment is sinking, causing the bridge to twist. So a few of the recommendations and opportunities at D.D. Kennedy. Let's see here. We can redesign and resurface the parking lot, which was half of it was done this year. New 3-panel kiosks to make it easier for people to get information, interpretive signs, directional signs on this kiosk. Fix and replace the walking bridge we talked about. Repaving the trail network. The blacktop trail out there is cracked and there's weeds growing in it. We can spray it, probably carry it on for another few years, but at some point it's going to need to be resurfaced or repaved. Resurfacing the limestone trails. There is a small trail network right in the park that is not paved. It's limestone. So that's going to need a little update. Update and replace the playground equipment. There's an old swing set out there that could use a facelift. Boards on the fishing pier and installing a new roof on the pavilion. And these projects, as you can see, range from, well, this one's 2019, 2020, all the way up to 2024. And so the projects with D.D. Kennedy and Algren were outlined in the outdoor rec plan as potential things that we're going to need to look at going into the future, and things that we might need to fix right now. So that's it for D.D. Kennedy and Algren. Are there any questions on those guys?
The paved trail at D.D. Kennedy, what kind of length is that? Are we talking miles of it, or?
It's about a mile.
Okay, and 6-8 feet wide, 10 feet wide.
Five, I would say 5 to 6 feet wide at the widest.
Okay.
Staff and I were considering, and this is completely up to you all, actually incorporating a tour out to both of these facilities. And we've actually lined up a van, an ADRC van. Whether it can be in a subsequent meeting, we were thinking about the next meeting. Maybe at the end of the meeting, we could take you out to both sites. However, we want to be cognizant of your, concerns with COVID. But we could be safe and responsible. And we're just curious how receptive you would be to go out to those sites. They are nearby. And we could, again, put it as a bookend to the end of the meeting at the next second meeting in August.
Does anyone think we should go to?
I'm fine with it either way.
All right. Yeah, we could probably set that up.
Yeah, we thought we'd give it a try. Actually, if it works and it's successful, so you guys could see the deficiencies in the assets at both of these sites, we were planning on continuing that in the fall with a subsequent trip to Apple River campground. We'd really like for you to see not only our deficiencies there, but what a potential vision for that campground could be. So just wanted to share that with you as well. So I'm hearing you guys are receptive to that for the next meeting pending rain?
Yes.
Okay, we'll schedule that then. Thank you.
Now, this is something the CAG is gonna work on also. This is part of their.
This certainly could be something that the TAG would work on, some of the larger projects. A lot of these smaller projects, relatively smaller projects are something that staff could handle doing.
Like the giant DB with all the, some of these, that's what we want to take to work on. All of ours.
Yes, yep.
Right, that connectivity piece, and finding space for all these other systems required for the parks and trails deposit.
So Alden and DD Kennedy do touch at some point where they could be joined together? They're very close, couple hundred feet. So right now, you're going to have to walk a little bit of 120th Avenue, just a couple hundred feet.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Moving on to the next agenda item, which is the Cattail Trail. The last time I spoke about the Trailhead Bridge right in the city of Amory, it sounded like you guys were pretty on board with going with River City Construction. They would have been the low bidder. At that time, I had you hold off on making a motion to approve that simply from the standpoint of I did not have the total funding associated with repairing that bridge. To remind you, the initial grant was put in for about $60,000 to redeck the bridge. I had some concerns over the bridge, so I called in a DNR engineer to kind of help us out. And we ended up doing an addendum this April to increase the funds from $60,000 to just north of $100,000. We finally got the letter from the DNR on July 27th, somewhere in there. So with the low bid coming in at $94,440 from River City Construction out of Medford, we are within budget. Any overruns, I have talked to the snowmobile through our trail maintenance funding because there is some unit cost with the riprap, et cetera. We've got about $6,000 worth of slush in there. So it appears we're fine. I've talked to the contractor. They're still on board to do it this year prior to snowmobile season. Deadline would be November 30th. So with that said, unless you have any questions, I guess I'd like to see a motion to move forward with repairing the bridge at the Amory Trailhead on the Cattail Trail. This will be going to general government also tomorrow. So unless you have any further questions.
All right. I know. Go ahead.
I can make that motion that we move ahead with the process of repairing or replacing the bridge.
All right, just a second. Sure. Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Good to go.
Next on the agenda would be basically approving resolution 2720, which I painstakingly took all you guys through 8 meetings, and after it was all said and done, we revised about 300 pages associated with the Polk County Forest 15-year plan. So I appreciate your patience on that and all your hard work. I'm not going to read the resolution. I guess our last meeting, we talked about it, incorporated the ideas associated with approving the plan. I guess this is a time to, if you guys have any further questions on the plan. I did go ahead and I didn't change anything, but I did a lot of formatting type of issues and corrected spelling errors, mostly formatting, spacing, etc. The most recent draft that I have is posted on the website. So the table of contents for the entire plan is now there, and I did add a glossary. That would be the only difference. So any further questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. Paul, do you have anything to add?
You still on, Mark?
Yeah.
But I just want to, real quick, thank you guys for doing the work and thank Mark for working on this. Every county with county forests, and there's what, 30 now, 31, is going through this process at the same time. And Mark's been working on this for probably 1.5 years now because he was on the statewide committee to rewrite that template for all the counties. So we're at this process. So assuming that you guys pass this resolution, we move it on to full county board. I hope he gets, he gets full support at county board, at least from this committee. And then at full county board, which we've seen this happen before, but if somebody comes up with a great idea at full county board that they don't see in this plan that they want, I still hope that you pass the existing plan as it is, and we can always amend this plan later going forward. We need to get this thing passed so that you can apply for grants and we can just run the county for us. But we can always, if someone has a great idea, we can work on that later. So that's what I had.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to move this to the board.
I'll second it.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And one final update that it necessarily isn't on the agenda, but I am applying for 2 sustainable forestry grants. The first would be associated with a GPS unit. Basically, it's sub-meter accuracy. There'd be no cost to the county. It's a 100% grant. The second would be putting up roughly somewhere between 1 acre to 2 acres of fencing to keep deer out. This would occur just north of W in the town of, help me out here. Not the rain? Yeah, in the town of the rain. So basically it was harvested 2 winters ago as an oak shelterwood harvest. We're just trying to get an idea and do some measurements on the effect of deer browse that's having some types of impact on the oak regeneration within the county. These types of structures are already up on state land within the county, and they're spread all across the state. So it'd be nice to contribute some data to statewide to understand the impacts of deer browse. So hopefully you guys don't have any problem with that, and I can go ahead and do that. Again, these are 100% grants. So if I could get a motion for that, that'd help me out on the application process of the grants.
Do we need motions for you to get grants?
Just so it's in the minutes.
Yeah, you don't need a motion, just need the approval.
Okay.
You're okay with
I'm okay.
It's not on the agenda.
Okay.
You can't take action on something that's not on the agenda. Do we have time to put it on?
So we'll just do an update that we talked about it, and I'm applying for two sustainable forestry grants. That'll help me out if it's in the minutes. So.
And just put it on the next agenda. We'll put it on the next agenda.
Thank you.
You want to do the additional use-based stuff or the operation-based stuff?
I don't know if it's gonna matter.
All right, so since the last time we met, you guys also have a copy of this letter that we received from DATCAP. And this was a review of the conditional use permit conditions that we've been talking about adding to the comprehensive ordinance. And basically, they completed their review of that compared to ATCP 51, which is the livestock sighting standards that they would have. His first bullet point in that there was in regards to swine issues, and basically in that political subdivision cannot prohibit and that based on species. Then also the second and third bullet points, and that's basically where he's removing the conditions and that the county cannot enforce underneath ATCP 51. So in the third one, A, B, C, D, E, G, I, J, K, L, M, P, those are all conditions that basically ATCP 51 does not regulate at all. So there is no standard for it. And that's where we were saying before, and that when we were contemplating on whether or not to send this off, is because they're only reviewing it for this, that's what they're going to remove. It's not like shoreline zoning or NR 115 on the DNR standards, whereas if it's not regulated, then the county can still regulate it. This is, and that is that if it's not included in there, then the county can't do it. So that's where there's a lot more flexibility, I'll say, in the shoreline zoning standards versus in the DATCAP administrative code. And that's basically what I've got for an update. I didn't know if the committee wanted to go through more of the conditions, but we're kind of waiting for our Health and Human Services Committee and then if they've got any comments on it. And then I think the operation-based ordinance, I can maybe piggyback with Malia or anything on that. If she's got any questions, or you guys got any questions to tie the two together.
All right.
At this point, it would be my suggestion or motion, or whatever you want to put it, that we wait for, we don't even have it, we need to discuss these more in light of some new information that I received yesterday. So I think we just need to put these on hold until we discuss the direction we want to head.
All right, Malia. Yes. Ordinance. That's what we're looking at too.
I did draft an operational ordinance at the request of the administrator. It is the same, more or less, save a few changes. Mr. Olson's nuclear option is added in there so that if it is determined by a court that swine only prohibition is unlawful, that the ordinance in its entirety would be deemed. I did make it swine specific. So one of the lobbyist firms that I spoke with Supervisor Middleton about a week ago. But Eureka Town authorization statutory language to the closest I could come up.
All right. And we just received that today, did we not? Yes. All right.
Can I back up just a second back to the conditional use permit? And this is just off of memory, so if I'm wrong, but was A in our conditional use permit not the nutrient management plan requirement? Could not some of those things that are perhaps that they came back with, came back with and said that maybe we can't do, like that one, I believe, and this was just the one that jumps out at me. On the nutrient management plan, we kind of dictated that it went to the county and the towns and things like that. If we just said that a nutrient management plan was mandated, which it already is, would something like that probably not pass? And a number of those 10 or 12 things that were on there that, let's say, we couldn't do, on some of those, at least, if just the wording was changed to, shall we say, state wording, I'll say they'd possibly be approved, where, like I said, that was the one that jumped out at me, where we added some wording to saying the nutrient management plan was mandated. Maybe on some of those things, if just some of the wording was changed, they would be approved to be in a conditional use permit, rather than being, kicked out. It's maybe just the way it's worded or phrased, and so maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is of those they're saying you can't use if we just tweak the wording a little bit. I don't know. I'm just saying it's a possibility that maybe they're okay if we tweak the wording some. Just a thought.
Correct, exactly. On A there, I think that you could easily say shall have a nutrient management plan that meets the 590 nutrient management practice standards. But then after that, we say and must ensure land base is sufficient to handle the waste produced annually. I believe that's the clause and that why they removed that. However, in that part of doing a nutrient management plan is to make sure that, each acre is only getting the amount of waste that it can handle, and that without becoming excessively high for the phosphorus nutrients and stuff. So, it's kind of already included in the nutrient management plan. That's why you're doing a nutrient management plan.
Yeah, but I guess I'll say that was my point. If we just change our wording a little bit, it falls into what they would probably allow any conditional use permit.
Correct. And would you like me to go through this flow chart? No? Okay.
Chairman O'Connell, we put this together just to compare the two, an operational base ordinance as opposed to conditional use. There's a lot of flexibility with the conditional use, and a lot of the conditions can be applied in both ordinances. The three main differences is, again, the conditional use just covers those units of government with zoning or under county zoning authority, whereas the operational base covers the entire county. Another key difference is those financial assurances, which has been talked about, and also the renewal fees or the fee schedule. So, but the conditions themselves, there's a lot of flexibility with conditional use, and if we can make them scientifically defensible, they are conditions that we could apply for an applicant. So we kind of put this together just to help compare the two and also identify those differences. It sounds like, well, at the next Health and Human Service meeting, both Jason and I will be there and work with them through, their additional efforts. Another key difference between the two ordinances is the focus on animal health and human health and safety. And there seems to be a more robust set of conditions with the operational base. So basically, this is just a resource for you to compare the two, and it also talks about the procedures and processes as well.
All right, and is there also a way we can do both? That's what I read also.
Yes, you'd be able to do both ordinances, a CUP and an operational based ordinance, because they're two totally different statutory authorities.
Mr. Chairman, I have some comments on the operational ordinance. Should I give those at this time? Sure. Or at B? I'm not sure if we have an A and B together.
Kind of mixed, yes.
Yeah, so I have some comments.
Sure.
And I'd like to start with a timeline. I think that's a good way to start. And we've been listening to the public. We've had public comments, we've had public emails, we've had public phone calls, and a group of supervisors, and there are three of them are sitting here, and myself and Amy Middleton and Tracy and Fran Wilkinson have been working toward an operational ordinance, discussing that and just working and talking to the administrator. And our board chair just said that we should start by talking to the administrator. So we've done that. But we seem to hit a roadblock in every time with, well, I'm not sure we can go that direction. So one of the comments that we had from the administrator was, we can't come in and say, he said, she said. We need to document everything and come back to him with documentation of why we say we can do this or we can't do that. So we like challenges, we're supervisors, we did that. We reached out to Eureka, we reached out to Lake Town, we reached out to Trade Lake, we reached out to Burnett County, we reached out to Bayfield County, thank you. And we also talked to, with Marina, we had a conference call with Midwest Environmental Lobbyist and the attorney there. So he had recommendations on DATCAP, and coincidentally then it happens we get the letter that came from DATCAP from Jason. They're not from Jason, but we got it, okay, in a timeline. Well, what we looked at was basically this Tim Jackson says anybody who wants to reach out and talk to him should do that. So we thought between Fran Duncanson and I that we should reach out to him. So last Thursday, I gave a call down and talked to Tim Jackson. And I didn't ask him about the conditional use analysis. I was asking him about a performance bond and about increased fees on the permit. And he said, well, I'm fairly new here. I'll have to talk with my supervisors. And we don't meet as often because of the COVID, but we'll meet on Friday and we'll discuss this. I said, great. I said, you probably get another call from another supervisor. So I had a discussion with Fran Duncanson, and she had talked to him on Friday. But we got no call back until Tuesday. And in that call, he mentioned Fran had called him. He mentioned what I had asked him about, and he said Fran discussed the Bayfield ordinance with him. Well, he said I hadn't studied it. I wasn't really up on it. So he spent 2 hours on Monday reading the Bayfield ordinance. And he said the DNR has an issue with their watershed ordinance. Well, we all knew that. So that's nothing new. But he said there's a sentence in the Bayfield ordinance, and I'm not an attorney, he referred to, depending on your analysis of this sentence, might be good or bad, but he said there's nothing wrong with the Bayfield ordinance. He said if you want to go that direction and have an operational ordinance, he said go for it. It's right here. And then I thought, well, that's great. Then we can look at going forward on an operational ordinance, bring it to the committee. So then I asked him about a performance bond. And he said, well, every 2 years we go back and look at what we require. And he said, right now I talked to my supervisors and I got the same response from Adam out of Madison that this performance bond there is not enforceable by DATCAP. So his opinion was we can have a performance bond. But he said if you don't want a problem with the performance bond, then you should put it under a manure storage ordinance. Then there will be no problem with a performance bond. So what I'm getting at is we have a letter we sent to the administrator, and it seems like we were giving him our opinion because we keep coming back with all this data that says we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, and that's the direction we want to move the supervisors. So we didn't want to send this to CC to all the supervisors because we were afraid of the open meetings law. So we sent it to the administrator, CC it to Maria. Well, it seems to me that didn't go over well in our process, because then we get a letter from the administrator, and it's this full page, and I don't want to read it to you. I want to ask that it gets sent to all the supervisors. But I would like to read, I was hoping that the board chair would have stayed here to listen to this. But it says here, I am copying Chairman Nelson on this email because I believe it is a matter that the executive committee should discuss. Does the county board want supervisors working outside of the board committee structure to influence policy in the manner you are proposing? My concern is that your request is not based on the quality of your council's opinion, but rather on its content, which may not support your political position. Well, we've done our homework and we've got our political position. And I would like this taken to the executive committee, and I'd also like to see maybe it could be brought to the executive committee in a chairman at the board level, so that everybody can listen to what's said. Because this really troubles me, this letter here. I think every supervisor should look at it. Because we have a right to an opinion, and we were giving it, and it seems like it wasn't taken well. So I guess that's my rant for today.
All right.
So would we not, oh, excuse me. Sure. Would we then be okay in sending this to DATCAP and the DNR? I mean, our conditional use went, they came back and said, here are these things that are wrong. So before any committee moves forward and wastes a lot of time, should we not know in this, just like in the conditional use permit, what the state says what you can do and you can't do? I mean, I've taken a little bit of heat over the last few months for thinking that this is foolishness and should end, which I believe it was. But I'll support a conditional use permit that is approved by the state. We sent our conditional use permit in. They sent it back and said, here's a list of things that are wrong with that conditional use permit.
Just to be clear, I don't think we sent it in. I think they went to our website and pulled it.
Okay. Okay, we didn't send it in, however they got it. I mean, it's a public document, so they can look at it just like, they can look at this, but But we've spent a lot of time in this committee over the last 2 months to have it come back from the state, who is willing to help us to say, you know, here's some things that are not right in your conditional use process. Wouldn't we be better off to know that about this before we spent months and literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in staff time working on something where the state eventually comes back and says, yeah, you can't do that, you know, or it's illegal. I mean, like I said, I will vote for anything on either side that the state says you can legally do. I guess a question for Maria. I mean, the county board passes something in a resolution or an ordinance, and this isn't even CAFO specific, but we passed something that the state has told us up front is very iffy, or we recommend that you not do. We turn around and get sued by whoever it is, whatever the issue is our insurance company on the hook, or we, the Polk County taxpayers, on the hook for that? As far as whatever the judgment against the county would be, if there was one.
Our insurance is a liability insurance, so it would not cover something like this. It's more of somebody gets hurt.
Right, one of those highway trucks hits somebody or another county vehicle or whatever, we're insured from a liability standpoint. But I mean, you know, that's the case. I think that again, moving forward, maybe it shouldn't be the deciding factor, but it's very important to realize that, okay, we've got, I don't know what it is, $7, $8, $9 million in theory in reserves, and we get sued, and we get sued for $5 million and lose. That's where that money is coming from. It's not coming from an insurance company who's raising our premiums, you know, because they had to pay out. You know, and that being the case, I think we need to make sure that not just in this issue, but other issues, that we stay within state guidelines, because once we as a county decide we're willing to go outside of those state guidelines, you know, there's all kinds of things I'd like to be outside of state guidelines on in the Justice Center. And I think we need to be very careful to take the state's word and say, you know, if we like it or not. I mean, there's things in there I don't like, but if it's legal, it's legal. And we can enforce it, or somebody else can, or whatever it is. But once we step across that line and say, we're going to try and enforce something that the state says pretty much you cannot or you should not do, that becomes completely different, regardless of the issue.
All right. But now, like Doug said, we should put this off a while. When is the next human service? Next Tuesday. Because they want to look at this one also, don't they? Have they seen it?
I can't get my thing to come on.
So they have.
Yeah, we have it.
Is it on your agenda?
I'm just firming up the agenda now that needs to go.
You're really hard to hear today, sir. I don't mean that. I just can't.
Well, I was wondering if it was on Health and Human Services agenda, because we just got it also.
Right. We just laid on our desk this morning.
Yep.
Yes.
So they should put it on their agenda also.
So they should what?
Put it on their agenda also.
Oh, yes, I would hope so. Yeah.
Make sure we do this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Well, one comment is we have just been put on our desk. We need a lot of time to analyze that. What's there, compare it,
I
reach
literally
out.
took the Eureka ordinance, changed it to Polk County, changed the statutory authority from town's authority exercising village powers to county authority, made it swine specific, and added Mr. Olson's nuclear language. Those are the only differences from the Eureka ordinance.
So I think this is a question for Maria, because it's depending upon how the agenda is. I mean, could this committee today agree to just send this to the DNR and DATCAP, or because it's not on our agenda, could we not take that sort of action?
I think, a couple of things. We're on the radar of DATCAP. They might see that this is out there now and go out and get the packet that goes to Human Services and look at it. Or just as a consensus, ask the administrator to forward it. But I would recommend that. I think it's a good idea.
We won't be acting on this anytime soon anyway. Because Health and Human Services wants to look at it also. Okay. Well, that could save us some time if we have them look at it.
That's not taking action, so I think by consensus.
Sure. All right. Is that what everybody thinks? What do we do? Have them send it to DATCAP, the other one, so we just.
Well, I don't think we're ready to send it to DATCAP. We haven't even read it. And not because I don't want to send it there. I just talked to him yesterday, and he'll work with us on anything we want to do.
Okay.
But I think we need at least. I haven't even seen it.
I haven't either.
So then don't we can wait 2 weeks and discuss it again.
Why not send it to them and get their feedback back, so in 2 weeks, more than likely, we know what that feedback is. I don't know how long it took them to look at our conditional use, because we didn't send it to them, so we don't know when they got it, or or what time frame they pulled it off, but there again, for the most part, it was maybe late on my desk today, but I pretty much know what's on it. It's the Bayfield ordinance, it's the Eureka ordinance. There's the main things are going to be in it, and I'm not sure why we would not want DATCAP and the DNR to respond to it and say, here's what we like, here's what we don't. You need to do this. You should, no different than the conditional use permit. Is then we get that feedback, and then right from the start, instead of wasting time, let's say in 2 weeks, saying, well, what about this, and this? Maybe in 2 weeks we already know what the DNR and DATCAP has said on these things, and it's like, okay, we can't do this, but we can do this over here, and maybe just like the nutrient management plan, maybe it's just a wording change to be able to do something, and not a full-scale change of things.
So I have no problem with DATCAP. That's not what my opinion is, because he said reach out to us at any time if you want to discuss what you're doing, and I'll help you move ahead. Well, we've got 2 weeks, but let's look at this. There's no rush to have it sent to him. We can call him tomorrow. He said, if you have any questions, call me.
You can help us so we don't do everything twice.
Yeah. So do I need a motion to wait for 2 weeks, or we just do it?
I think we'll send it to them and they'll tell us.
You what?
They'll still tell us. You said we could call them anytime.
Right.
But we need help for the.
So let's have a chance to at least do our job and look at it.
Yes, but if they change everything, we don't.
Well, I'm not saying we're saying one word. I'm just saying, to look at it.
And so should they.
Perhaps I'll just decide to send it to them in my role as court counsel, since I'm the one who drafted this at the request of the administrator, and I can get their feedback. I don't think it needs committee action. More information is better than less.
Yes.
And just let me comment, if I may, Chair, on why I had them drafted, is because I've come to several meetings now where we bring up the idea we want a Eureka-like ordinance, or we want other things, studied, but yet nobody presents them. So I asked them to go ahead and present the ordinance like they ask, so that we could move with this as opposed to just delaying it.
All right. Discuss. Yes.
Tanya, I think you could use the same language in 10B there on our agenda. Use that same wording.
And what about the CUP conditions? Isn't Health and Human Services supposed to be adding or to that too?
I think that might be dead in the water. You can do the exact same thing and add it to the operations, because the operation ordinance actually, this covers a lot of what we were wanting anyway. So we've kind of gotten a bit of the ball down the road on this. But I think Health and Human Services, just so I'm clear, I don't know that we can like go into the meeting, our next meeting, we have a presentation by hydrologist, DNR, and then if Bob and Jason are coming, they need to digest that, and then maybe the next meeting, Tanya and I put together any additional conditions that we heard from them. I think that's the most ambitious push we can do. I don't think we can come out of a meeting next week with having them hear from DNR, hear from the hydrologist, hear this new operation ordinance, and digest all that, and then say what they want for conditions. Maybe Bob, you can pull some out a little bit, but I don't think. I think we're going to need some time on that.
Well, this is just a suggestion. Perhaps at your next meeting, Health and Human Services, adding both A and B. We can start with, again, that resource we talked about, the comparison piece. And then just to be able to frame what each ordinance means and looks like, I think that can be productive, and perhaps by then we might have a response from DADCAP. But regardless, I think as a suggestion, adding both 10A and 10B to the Health and Human Services agenda, particularly with Jason and I there as a resource going through the similarities and the differences.
Maybe we can just leave it on ours just in case, on our agenda. And then we can put it on the next one. If nothing's updated, so.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering for the for Health and Human Services, do we even need to do a comparison? I only say that because if really we are trying to move this along, and maybe our conversation is, what are the conditions of health and human related that you want in here? Maybe that would be a better use of our time, because the CUP comparison piece, I don't know, I'm just trying to like get out of them that piece, because that's really what we're trying, that's our end game.
Well, what is CUP? To do with the environmental impact, we can add more conditions. I think a lot of the conditions that you see in both are interchangeable. So I don't know if we have a consensus on what path we're going down. So, and both Jason were prepared to, again, revisit with the Health and Human Services the work that has been done, introduce the idea of operational based ordinance, compare the two, and then hopefully, move forward with the path.
Yeah, correct. And that's why I would say by having A and B, that the Health and Human Services Committee could actually provide guidance, and not that they don't want to move forward with the CUP process at all, but at least allow you to talk about both. So.
Okay.
And it's our understanding that operational based ordinance is a public health ordinance. So if we're going on this path, we have to talk about oversight and who does what. Conditional use permits and zoning. Citing ordinance would be land and water. But that's just our understanding. So just something to think about. This work could shift to another governing committee potentially.
Sure.
So I guess my question is, Jason said, and it's not well, maybe it's a question for Jason, I'm not sure. Jason said earlier we can do them both. So this committee has sat here for just short of 12 months now working on a conditional use permit. So I guess why are we just stopping? Why do we want to just stop what we're doing maybe for 6 months or a year while Health and Human Services works on a operational ordinance? If we can do them both, why aren't
we going to, why aren't we going to keep moving forward, get our conditional use permit approved, and there again, and Health and Human Services can keep, as this committee knows more than anybody in this county, it just kind of has a tendency to drag on meeting after meeting after meeting. So why aren't we trying to get a conditional use in place instead of just saying, well, stop the conditional use and wait for Health and Human Services to catch up on an operational basis? If we can do them both, why not keep moving forward on a conditional use process, have something in place, and then whenever Health and Human Services gets done, if that's 4 months from now, or if it's 14 months from now, it can come back to the county board from Health and Human Services. Anyway, just a thought, and then will somebody holler at me if this isn't appropriate? I think it will be. Doug said earlier they had talked to a number of towns. Have you stepped outside of Trade Lake, Eureka, Lake Town? Have you went to Clam Falls, Lorraine? Probably the big one being Black Brook with 3 CAFOs within the 3 of the 5 CAFOs in one town. All of them, whoever, the rest of the towns to say, are you concerned about this and what are your towns doing about it? It's my understanding some towns have fired their planning commission. So I think, we need to look at more than just maybe the 1 or 2 towns that are saying, we want something done from the county, and look at a broader picture and say, we've got 24 towns within the county. How many of them are working towards putting some sort of regulation in place? I mean, I hear a lot about concern of unzoned towns. Well, I'm on the board in Clam Falls, an unzoned town. We have no concern. We don't need the county to look over our shoulder in this issue. I'm pretty sure if you asked the town board of Lorraine, they would tell you we don't need the county looking over our shoulder in this. We are unzoned for a reason. If you are a town that is unzoned and are horribly concerned about this, you do have an option. At any time, the town board can pick up the phone and call the county and say, we would like to be in zoning. So there is a way for them to be protected through zoning. The fact that they choose to do or not do that, that's a town issue. That isn't, we got out of zoning because we didn't want county zoning. And we have not had one person show up to a meeting to say, oh boy, what if a CAFO comes to Clam Falls? And for one thing, there's not enough land in Clam Falls to have a CAFO. But, I think if we're going to survey some towns and see what their thoughts are, then, maybe the county itself should take it upon themselves to survey towns and see just exactly what towns are or are not doing on the issue.
All right. Yes.
Supervisor Olson, my comment is just a clarification on, you're talking about sending the conditional use to DATCAP. And you prefaced that with saying maybe some of the wording was wrong in your, was it your mineral management or? But anyway, what I'm saying is we haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
So we need time to discuss it. It's not on the agenda, but we can't just we just sent it to them, but we sent the 5 that we had. Nothing's changed.
The 5 what conditions?
Yeah, he took 17, took 12 out, we have 5. Yeah. So are we just sending the same 5 back?
No, we're sending.
I want a clarification.
We're sending the operational.
Well, that's not what Brad said. He's talking about conditional use. Yeah. Was he not? I mean, I'm just confused.
No, I was saying like in A on the conditional use, I believe it was that spoke about nutrient management plan. What I was saying is the state would perhaps allow if we changed the wording some
in A, we could say that a nutrient management plan was, the word I'm looking for, but it would be approved by the state if we changed some of the words. Maybe if we took a few words out, added them somewhere else, and just said, you have to have a 590 nutrient management plan, instead of saying, we added just a sentence, whatever it was, to it. If we removed that sentence, then perhaps DATCAP would say, yeah, you can have, A can stay because you removed whatever it was we added. And perhaps that would be the same scenario for some of the other things DATCAP has said. You should reconsider of these 12. Maybe we get some of them approved, I'm saying, by just changing some of the words in them.
I understand that, but I just mixed up, I guess, right now, in that you said we need to send this back to them. Well, we have to work on it and remove those words if that's the intent.
Correct.
Right. No,
So the next meeting is when we'll look at,
Yeah.
we're gonna go through those.
Right.
We're not gonna send it back right away.
Okay.
Yep, it'll be on the next agenda. Go through.
Do you guys want staff to try to work with DATCAP on trying to change the wording in that, in the ordinance, or in the conditions themselves and that, to try to get as many conditions as we can to the 17 that you guys have been working on?
Yeah.
I would think so, because there again, it's DATCAP who's going to say yes or no. So if, there again, we can sit here and spend months at it, but if DATCAP says, here's the words you need to remove on the nutrient management plan to make it pass, we know when we come back at our next meeting that Jason says, okay, here's what we had to change in A. What do you think of it? Probably many other letters too, but then we would know what, at that point, what DATCAP was saying, well, you can or you can't do, and maybe someone will just say, well, yeah, you shouldn't do that, at all.
Well, so here's what I'm thinking, and that is some of this, and that may be able to be put into like our administrative provisions for like a CUP process, and not actually directly put underneath a swine CAFO operation, like the professionally engineered plan. It'd be nice to get that with all conditional use applications. So we could definitely do that, just so that the committee understands that, and that we're talking about amending a wider portion of the ordinance, and that it's not going to be narrow, it's not going to be use specific, but we might be able to get some of these same conditions still in the ordinance, but in a way that might be compliant.
And again, Jason or Bob, correct me if I'm wrong. So we talked about the 5 mile thing. That's probably something that's really not going to fly, but down the road, if Jason, you're the applicant, we could say, are you willing to live within 5 miles of the farm? And if you say yes, then we could enforce that condition. If you say no, we couldn't turn the application down because of that. But if you agree to that condition as the applicant, then it is in place, just like if it was on this paper. We just could not turn it down. So a lot of those things that DATCAP has perhaps said you can't do could still be asked of the applicant. And if the applicant agreed to it, there would be a condition. They just perhaps could not be what I call an upfront condition for getting the conditional use permit.
Correct. And that's what Bob was hitting on earlier, and that was his comparison table. When you look at that comparison table, and that the operational side of it is very long and lengthy, okay? It'll regulate all this stuff. And the CUP, and that is not long and lengthy right now. But it's important to point out, and that CUP process could actually be more specific and longer if you look at the comparison chart than the operational base. And that because you have a lot more flexibility, and that every property is different. That's why our office does site visits, and that issue 700 land use permits in a year. And that so far, and no application is the same. So every site is a little bit different. You got a dry run, you got a swamp, you got sandy soil, you got clay soils. So, and that I could actually argue in that a CUP process is going to provide more restriction than an operation-based ordinance. And it comes back to, that application flow though, that's important, and that citing, we have an administrative review, and that CUP comes to you guys. The way that this operations ordinance and that is done, they apply through county clerk and it comes before the full county board. And maybe that's what you want, but I'm just saying that that's how the process is different for each ordinance.
All right. Any other questions on this? Next. All right. See.
So this is an easy one. The town of St. Clair Falls administers their own zoning, and that within non-shoreland areas in the town. And as part of that, we receive from time to time any ordinance amendments and rezoning that they do within the town. And so on July 16th, we received notice in that the town board had passed resolution 20-16 on their July 15th town board meeting. And that was to take and rezone a piece of property from agricultural to transitional. And it was two parcels, parcel number 044, 00012 and 0100. And then 044, 00017, 0000. And basically, in order for their zoning map to be officially changed, the county board has to approve it. And that the rezone is fine with our comprehensive plan. So I see no reason not to recommend approval.
All right. Anybody have questions on it?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll say.
Sure. Questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? So that'll go to the full board. All right. Number 11.
No updates, Chairman O'Connell.
All right. Number 12. Yeah, you want this on there? So you want that on the next one? You want it on the next meeting? At least for discussion. Okay, so we'll tell Bob that. That's the moratorium extension.
Chairman O'Connell, we'll visit with Mo. I don't know, Mo, if we'll have any updates at the next meeting for tax delinquent properties. Are we waiting till fall? Okay, so maybe until the next auction in the fall, we'll have you on the agenda. We did already. And
we did our fees.
Yeah,
so
we did
that would
ours
be at your
a couple months ago.
highway meeting. That'll have to go in the next meeting. I see it's at general government too. So, okay, we'll put that on.
I'll put that on.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll have that. For Parks and Recreation, we'll put that at the end. We'll schedule a tour for the end of the meeting. For Forester, we'll have approval to apply for those sustainable forestry grants. And then down to zoning, outside of any subdivision reviews. What we'll have is A will be changed. We'll have discussion and recommendations from DATCAP regarding the amendments to the CUP in Act 1.
Yeah.
And then B, I suppose, will stay the same. And then we'll add the resolution to extend the moratorium as well.
Discussion.
Okay. For discussion and consideration. And I'd like to put a closed session. There is an emerging issue on the horizon regarding the negotiation of the parcel, and we'll talk to more about that. So that perhaps can be added to the agenda. Okay.
And Mr. Chair, we also have a public hearing scheduled for 10 o'clock for a regional.
All right. Okay, so some of the other things we can get up front, the forestry and that would be before the year. Get those done.
Do we want to set a timeline just so that we know that, I don't know, whatever amount of time it is, that's when we're leaving in 2 weeks for the tour? You know, so that at 10:30, whatever the time is, everybody knows that this meeting will be over at 10:30 because we're going on the tour of the Algren and the D.D. Kennedy, so that it's not, you know, like maybe a typical environmental service meeting and it's 12 or 1:30, 12 or 12:30 and we're done, and then we're heading to D.D. Kennedy, you know, in Algren. I mean, do we want to, I'll say, move that up enough to know that we'll be back in a decent time frame? Just a question.
Well, we can return after the tour, couldn't we? That is the very last thing.
Exactly. It's a good point. We'll schedule the tour at 11. Perhaps I think that'll give us enough time, particularly with the public hearing and the conversation. I'd like to have closed session at the end before we leave the facility.
And I would say 11 or soon thereafter can begin, just in case for some reason something ran a little bit long. I'll use that.
Right. And then, probably a poor question, Bob, now, but any idea how long the tour will take?
An hour and a half at most.
Okay.
We're just down the road.
Because Algren's is just 2 parking.
Yeah, it's right adjacent to D. Kennedy.
D.D. Kennedy, Algren's just 2 parking lots.
We'd like for you to at least look at the bridge, so there's a short walk. But beyond that, it's up to you how far you want to walk in Algren. We do have a groomed trail there, but it's relatively a short area. So.
Okay. Anything else coming up? All right. 13.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.